Firstly, let's go over a theory that I've been seeing that I wanted to stop in its tracks. I mean, it's probably not gonna happen, because this video is probably gonna get like 6,000 views max, but either way, the identity of this little girl is 100% not Susie, the girl who goes on to possess Chica. Susie has been dead for a long time once the game takes place, being dead for over 50 years or so. So there is literally no possible way that this girl could be Susie. You may be thinking that she could be possessed by Susie, but we released her spirit in the Happiest Day minigame, and she has only possessed Chica as far as we've known. Some assume that the Happiest Day minigame takes place at the end of the timeline, however I don't think that's true. Considering how FNAF 3 was supposed to be the end, and that when FNAF 3 is over we get the good ending, to me that indicates that the Happiest Day minigame takes place in FNAF 3, especially considering how the simulated pizzeria FNAF 6 does not have to lure the original animatronics back to the pizzeria, meaning that they did not need to be released because, well, they had already been dealt with. So about this girl, let's go over some evidence about what we see on the poster. Firstly, there is her blonde hair. We know that it's blonde thanks to the rim lighting on the character being blonde at her hair, and while yes it may seem stupid, I think that the general consensus is that this girl is blonde. While rim lighting is the color of the light that it is instead of the color of the person, it also isn't going to be yellow on a darker surface, so this means that her hair is not black, eliminating Cassidy from the race. So this is not the spirit that was possessing Golden Freddy, or who a good amount of people consider the one you should not have killed, aka the vengeful spirit from Ultimate Custom Night. The girl in the middle is also wearing a jacket and what appears to be a denim skirt, fingerless gloves, white socks, and sneakers that light up Skechers style. Hashtag not sponsored, but like Skechers, hit me up, we can probably work something out. Now this may not be out of the ordinary to any of you, but this instantly reminded me of someone from a previous game. As I did mention this in another video, Elizabeth Afton. Okay, I get that she's been dead for longer than Susie, but just hear me out, okay? See, when we were playing Sister Location, we ended up getting the cutscene where Elizabeth is grabbed and killed by Baby, turning Baby's eye color from blue to green. This outfit that this mysterious girl is wearing is nearly identical to the one that Elizabeth was wearing in that minigame. Aside from the light up shoes that wouldn't be available for another decade by real world standards. However, in FNAF in 1983, they also had discs that emitted sounds that altered the appearance of things in your brain. So a couple of light up shoes 10 years early doesn't really seem like that much of a stretch. The skirt is also identical to the skirt that Elizabeth wears in that cutscene, and the jacket could easily be covering up a similar styled shirt, which could be pushing the idea that Gregory having two stripes on his shirt is definitely important. But I want to talk about the color. You see, there is no real color on this girl. Bumping up the saturation, brightness, or vibrance actually shows that this girl is drawn in black and white. Have you ever heard of the saying, lack of evidence is sometimes itself evidence? Like maybe you're dealing with a professional killer, or that these thieves are overly cautious. Well, I think that this is a similar situation. Think about it. Why would they draw this girl in black and white? I mean, yeah, sure, she's backlit, but being backlit doesn't make you grayscale. This is an indication that the color of this girl's clothing can possibly mean something. Maybe Scott thought that he was too subtle with Gregory, only putting two stripes on his shirt, so this time he went for the full outfit including color. Speaking of color, there's also the matter of her shoes, the only part of her that isn't rimlit that has color. The color of her lights being purple and red. Purple obviously being a nod to William Afton, aka the Purple Guy, a character so synonymous with purple that I can't wear my favorite shirt on this channel now without being called a serial killer. And red, while misleading, actually does tie back to Elizabeth Afton in the form of Baby. Her entire outfit was red, including her bright red hair, and I mean, like, it seems fairly reasonable to assume that this girl has at least a connection to the Afton family, although there is another explanation for the red on her shoes. Give me a minute. Given that the other two humans on this screen, Vanny and Gregory, are also connected to the Aftons, we can guess that this is the case with the blonde girl as well. However, I don't think that the girl herself is Elizabeth. Here's the wow moment, alright? I think that this girl is possessed by Elizabeth. Yeah, I know, right? Hear me out. I know I said that that's not possible with Susie, but that's because we freed her, alright? There are 7 faces on the Blob, the secret antagonist of Security Breach. 4 of them have lit red eyes, and 2 of them don't. The 4 that do are Naked Endo, FNAF 1 Bonnie, FNAF 1 Chica, and Mangle, all of which are somehow present in some form or another in the Pizzaplex. Mangle is Roxy, Bonnie was Bonnie, Chica was Chica, and we fight multiple Endos on multiple occasions. The 2 that aren't present, however, don't have their eyes lit up. Baby and the puppet. But we know that fire doesn't do anything to Remnant, clearly. I mean, Afton has burned, what, 3 times now and none have stuck? And in another video, we determined that the spirits can only be freed when they get their unfinished business resolved, like the missing children in Happiest Day. Baby also doesn't seem too happy about burning in FNAF 6. She in fact says that she wants to make her daddy proud, and dying to fire would really do the opposite. opposite considering how many he survived. So, much like we suspect Michael could have, Elizabeth could have swapped bodies as well into one of the missing children that Vanny took. Hell, that could have been why Vanny took them in the first place. Afton wanted his daughter to have a vessel, hence why this one looks so much like Elizabeth's original body. This also explains why there is red on her shoes, because it's meant to represent the glowing red eyes that would be in the animatronic head. Remember, it's damn hard to kill an Afton for good, and in the books, Baby is really the one orchestrating everything, at least when it comes to the Afton amalgamation. Especially since this girl is facing away, her eyes could also be green. And I have a feeling that throughout the game we will see her eyes either flip-flop or start off blue and become green or something like that. Or, what I think would be the coolest way to do this would be having her eyes green normally, like if we see it in like a camera or something, but be blue in a mirror. So, here's how I think the story went. After the FNAF 6 fire, William gets a hold of Vanny in order to get his body back. He creates, through the company, a new location on top of the old one to hide his deeds, and then he sets himself free. In the process, though, he notices that his daughter's spirit is also stuck. Since this is the first time they've been together since he put her in the basement of sister location, he decides to help her out, and causes Vanny to start abducting kids who look like his in an effort to rebuild his former family. Given that his youngest son is either still possessing him or now loose to the elements as well, the blonde girl is then kidnapped and Elizabeth finds her suitable host, so she's possessed. And now she follows Vanessa around in an effort to keep an eye on her and remind her that Afton is always watching. She starts manipulating her through encoded chats and messages, and hacks the FNAF AR animatronics to cause them to malfunction, and gets Vanessa promoted to security guard to keep an even closer eye on her. As a part of her observations, she starts therapy just like Vanessa does, and despite her telling the truth about her family history, it doesn't line up with the girl that she's possessed. Hence the one therapist calling out Client 46 for it, and her explanation about what happened to her family seeming to lack emotion, since after all she watched it happen as Baby instead of experiencing it as an actual child. After the collapse, she is either brought back by Afton requesting help with himself, or possibly also to help secure the vessel for Crying Child, who escaped along with a Michael possessed glam rock Freddy. To me, this seems like a game about reuniting. Reuniting with lost brothers, lost hope, but most of all, reuniting a family. The Afton family. After all, we have all the characters now. The misguided father whose misdeeds cost him everything, his loyal daughter who wants to see her family back, the mother who now agrees and is a part of the father's plan, even if unwillingly so, and the sons, one too scared to do anything, and the older brother who helps him beat the circle that their father created, who rights their wrongs and makes up for their family's sins. What do you think? I feel like I'm pretty spot on with this one, and that this could be a great launching point for the next part of the series, but let me know what you think down below. The girl in the center of the FNAF Security Breach Ruins poster is most likely our player character for the DLC, considering how Gregory seems to be stuck since, you know, the words "help me" are written on a monitor showing his face. But who is this mysterious main character? It's a question that not many have an answer to, but I think I might have another one. So that's what we're exploring in today's video. Let's do it. Last time I came to the conclusion that this mysterious girl is one of this round's missing children that got possessed by Elizabeth, and while I do still firmly believe that, this got me thinking, who else could it possibly be? We asked you loyal subscribers on a community post, and the overwhelming conclusion was that the majority of you are wrong. Okay, just kidding. A lot of you though seem to think that this could be Vanessa as a ghost. And despite the fact that Vanny's eyes are on the poster, I think that you might actually be onto something. So let's talk about it. Although I just need to put this out there, the identity of this little girl is 100% not Susie, the girl who possesses Chica, okay? Susie has been dead for a very long time when this game takes place, being dead over 50 years or so, and while that doesn't really matter in the context of FNAF, there's still no way it could be. You may be thinking that she could be possessed by Susie, but we release Susie's spirit in the Happiest Day minigame. Some assume that this takes place at the end of the timeline, however I don't think that's true, considering how FNAF 3 was supposed to be the end, and that's when FNAF 3 is over and we get the good ending. So to me, that indicates that the Happiest Day minigame takes place around the time of FNAF 3, especially considering how the simulated pizzeria from FNAF 6 didn't have to lure the original animatronics back to the pizzeria, meaning that they did not need to be released, because they had already been dealt with. So in regards to this theory, the first thing I need to disprove is that it's impossible, since Vanny's eyes are in the corner. But just because we see some faded eyes, it doesn't mean that a spirit cannot be separate from a body. I mean, look at Afton, for example. This man was code that possessed a human while his body was stuck in an underground pizzeria. So there is a precedent for their body being around without their soul. The issue in my mind comes around when we see that since Fanny's eyes are glowing, her body is operational, which kinda shoots this theory between the eyes until you remember that there are multiple things possessing Vanny's body. One version of Glitchtrap's code and then Vanessa herself. So we can go one of two ways with this now. The fact that Vanny's body may solely be Glitchtrap now, or the fact that Glitchtrap is still operating in Vanessa, but Burntrap is also Afton. He's back as Afton, okay? Either way, there are two versions of Afton in operation right now. One of them is coded and the other is possibly not, but we can't really be sure. And William isn't the only person to have a coded version. I mean, remember Princess Quest? The game designed to keep Vanessa at bay while William wreaks havoc as Vanny? I mean, the Princess Quest ending, otherwise known as the best ending, is the only ending to have 3 stars. It had some significance, but what? It's a question we've been asking ever since Security Breach ended. Another one is what happened to the Princess Quest game machines located around the Pizzaplex. It seems reasonable that at the very least the one in Roxy's salon was destroyed, and if the Pizzaplex is in ruins, then the others must have been destroyed too, right? Well, if that is the case, what happens to Vanessa's spirit? Like, is it released, or does it fade away into nothing? It's not fading away, not with unfinished business still afoot. The spirit of Vanessa had to go somewhere, but where could it go? Well, this could be some random girl that Vanessa just grabbed off the street or that was walking by, or it could still be one of the missing children that was trapped in the building. Either way, whoever they are, it's really of little consequence if this is really Vanessa possessing them. Okay, the only thing that matters in this context is that Vanessa's possessing them, not who the kid is, I'm guessing. The precedent is set in this universe where one person can possess multiple things if one version that is possessing something is coded and the other is a spirit. So, this is definitely possible. The character on the poster is also actually completely grayscale, aside from the rim lighting thanks to her flashlight and the color of her lights on the shoes that she's wearing. These are also colored purple and red, colors that in this game specifically are linked to William because it's purple. I mean, I can't even wear a shirt on this channel now without being called the purple guy. So yeah, purple equals Afton, Burntrap, William, whatever. And then Vanny with her giant glowing red eyes are also on this poster, okay? It's like they wanted us to make this connection. But if they wanted us to make the connection, does that mean that this is all intentional, or is it mostly just a red herring or MacGuffin to keep us away from the real story? That's for you to debate in the comments. The girl in the center of the FNAF Security Breach Ruins poster is most likely our player character for the game, considering how Gregory seems to be stuck since, you know, the words "help me" are on a monitor in front of his face. But who is this mysterious main character? It's a question that we've been trying to answer multiple times, but there is one theory that is certainly interesting that I wanted to take a look at more. That's what we're exploring today. Let's do it. Now first, your instinct may be that this is impossible, okay? And honestly, that was my first instinct too. I mean, Susie's been dead since like 1985 with the missing children's incident, and she ends up possessing Chica, who is then set free and happy as a day. So like, how is it even remotely possible? Well, some say that the happiest day minigame that sets Susie free really takes place at the very end of the timeline, no matter when that ends up being, meaning that at the time of Security Breach, none of the original 5 animatronics have actually been released, which means that if we go off the fact that this girl is possessed, this is entirely possible. I mean, Susie is the first of the missing children, and definitely seemingly the most important one, given the fact that we see her as a kid in the Fruity Maze minigame's reflection. And I mean, even if the one you should not have killed is Cassidy, it's just a blown out version of her face. But the puppet is present for the Happiest Day minigame, and they get released in FNAF 6, right? There's one key detail, however, that really makes me unsure. Something that's been in the back of my brain for a while, but it may make a few people mad because it involves using the novels. In the original novel trilogy, starting with the Silver Eyes, the Funtime animatronics are injected with remnant made from the original 5 possessed animatronics, meaning that if remnant does indeed contain part of the soul instead of just being metal that once had a soul, the original 5, despite being set free in Happiest Day, no matter when it takes place, could still have the slightest bit of spirit form in the main world, I guess. Which could also explain why Molten Freddy had to show up along with Scrap Baby, also known as Elizabeth, in FNAF 6, unless we just assume that there was a slight bit of Elizabeth remaining inanimate after she left, or if we assume that Henry wanted to get rid of all traces of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, or all things that Afton created, which at that point also included his son. That's a lot of assumptions. So without assuming anything, but also while using the books to get some further context, which some people don't like, it is possible that after they burned in FNAF 6, much like Afton, Susie's spirit was set loose. Not free, like it didn't move on, but it was just loose in the atmosphere, willing to grab onto whatever it could. Or that it merged into the blob, and then the fire that Gregory causes, that caused the cave-in, ended up setting her soul loose again, and then she possessed a person. I don't think that there is really any explanation that could mean that this is Susie's original body. That seems fundamentally impossible. So whoever this is, if she is a character we've already met prior to this game, she would have to be possessed. Unless this is an entirely new character, which is absolutely possible. I mean, it doesn't have to be someone that's already established, obviously, but I mean, it's fun to speculate and theorize nonetheless. Another indication that I've seen a few people point out is that Chica does actually also appear on this poster, which is certainly an interesting choice. I mean, she was certainly the most popular enemy animatronic in this game, and the other animatronics are very out of commission even before the collapse. I mean, Roxy couldn't see and Monty was split in two. But since we can't really take anything in FNAF at first glance, is this actually meant to indicate the identity of our mystery girl? It's certainly a possibility. I mean, the only ones who really know are Steelwool, Scott, and whoever made the poster. But given Chica's state, I'm guessing that this is just meant to indicate a timeline, that this occurs after the collapse rather than at some other time prior to the game starting, and then maybe they rebuild the Pizzaplex, or maybe even long after it ends. Because I mean, look at her, okay? Chica has got to be probably one of the most resilient animatronics in the group, because she's still kicking despite being crushed by a trash compactor and then having a building land on top of her, and she still has most of her smoking hot bod. Some of it was removed, some of it was cracked, but her face also has seemingly melted, possibly due to the fire we were using to kill Burn Trap, or maybe it's just because a fire started in the kitchen when the building collapsed, and then she thought that it was just really hot pizza. I don't know. She's also lost the lower half of her left arm, her left, not your left. Remember that, I've made that mistake. And she's also lost her right leg warmer. The casing on her midriff and right arm is gone, but other than that, she is still fairly intact. Her endoskeleton is, at the very least, especially compared to Monty. Also, interestingly enough, only Chica's white face melted, meaning that it looks like someone spilt frosting all over her face. Yeah, I guess that takes the term busted to a whole new level. But other than that, there aren't really any connections between her and Susie. Probably the most resilient animatronic in the group because, again, she's still kicking. Susie was possessing the yellow Chica, so I feel like this Chica being white is meant to show us that this is not going to be the same sort of situation. So I don't think that relating this Chica to that Chica or this Chica to Susie is really logical in this case. I think it's a bad idea, okay? No, I guarantee you that this is not going to be Susie, and if it is, I'm going to quit FNAF. Look, yes, she's blonde, and yes, Susie was blonde, but she was also blonde in 1985, okay? It's been 50 years since the missing children's incident in the games, and the original Chica animatronic was destroyed, and Susie's spirit was released, okay? Happiest Day does not take place at the end of the timeline. The pigtails on this girl are very reminiscent of Baby, but this girl has blonde hair, and while we may not be able to see her face, I feel like it is possible that she does have green eyes, okay? Because anyone with blonde hair instantly makes me think of Elizabeth Afton, not Susie. Since Elizabeth has more impact to the story than Susie, and even in the books, Baby ends up having more of an impact thanks to the Afton amalgam. And considering the blob that got introduced in this game is very much similar to that amalgam, this still makes the most sense to me, okay? But I figured that I'd go through the possibilities in separate videos just for good measure, okay? I'm not sure.
Number 10. Vertical slice completed. In an announcement that Steel Wool Studios shared on their site, they mentioned that the process for Security Breach Rune was going well, and that they were moving ahead of schedule. But don't get too excited. They simply stated, and I quote, "We don't have any gameplay details that we're ready to share, but we can talk about where we're at in development. Pursuant to growing our processes, the Security Breach team spent significant time in rigorous pre-production process, focusing on streamlining our ability to construct fun, stable gameplay. So far, this year, we have delivered on our vertical slice milestone earlier than planned and are ahead of schedule for a major upcoming development milestone." What does that mean? What is a vertical slice? A vertical slice, or VC, is basically like a pitch for a game, a concept of a game. This is what game developers use usually to get investors hooked on the game in order to, raise enough funds, collect in the money so that they can then, bring that game to life. So what does that mean? It simply means that Steel Wool Studios has their concept down. Well, not only that, it was actually completed ahead of schedule. So while that's, promising to hear, ahead of schedule, we like that, it is a little frightening to know that they reported this in November of 2022, so it's only a few months ago. So, if that just happened, and we don't really have a clear timeline for when the VC was completed, admittedly, we might still be pretty far out in terms of design and gameplay features, because, that's a concept. So, we can work with that, it's something. But it's not like, oh, in like 2 weeks it'll be done, just polishing it up. Number 9. The protagonist has entered the chat. But who is she? Other than seemingly being the protagonist based on her stance in this poster with her little flashlight, we don't really know who this girl is. Is she Elizabeth Afton like many people claim because they think her hair is blonde? Is it even blonde? And if so, if she is Elizabeth Afton, how is that even possible? Or is she someone totally new? And if so, will we like her more or less than Gregory? Will she be just as sadistic? Will she matter to the lore, or will she just be some random character that doesn't really develop? Also, is Gregory coming back? He's on the poster too. He's probably coming back. I have more questions than answers for you on this point, and for that, I am sorry. But also, that's kind of just FNAF for you, I suppose. Even when we think we know things, really they are all just theories that we take at face value as facts because, well, otherwise we'd really know nothing about these games. And also, that's part of the fun. We like to try to follow the clues and then try to figure out what the facts are or could be plausibly. Something that I think could be true and would explain some of the red coloring perhaps on her shoes as well as the purple is that the little girl could have some connection to Vanessa, aka Vanny. I think that could also be a thing. I don't know if other people have been saying that. I haven't been deep into the theories in a little bit, but I feel like I haven't seen that one yet, so I don't know. If that's new, let me know. If it's not new, let me know who else is saying it, because maybe I should watch their content more, because I'm vibing with that. Number 8. How many is too many? Speaking of multiple ports across consoles, it's important to note that likely part of the delay for the Rune DLC was thanks to Steel Wool Studios also busting their game developing butts to get us the Xbox version of Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, which actually only came out late last year, if you could believe that. That's right, that's almost a year after the initial release of this game. Sorry, friends on Xbox. And the other thing that might cause you some worry to know is that Steel Wool Studios, following their work on Security Breach, is not necessarily prioritizing the Rune DLC, as the studio is actually also working on multiple titles now, having branched out to work on other projects at the same time, so it's not just FNAF, including things like Hello Neighbor 2 DLC and the game Hello Neighbor Search and Rescue. The only good news here is that they have also worked to expand their staff, doubling in size, so that should basically help them, I guess, to work on multiple projects at once and still remain just as, if not more, effective. At least that's what we're hoping for, and I'm sure that's what they're hoping for too, so fingers crossed. Number 7, available on all platforms. This is good news because it means that no matter where you bought this game, you will be guaranteed this DLC if you want it. But on the other hand, it could be a big part of the reason behind the delay we seem to be feeling or experiencing when it comes to the Rune DLC. I feel like it's been so long. I actually had to be like, oh man, how long ago did this game come out? I had to re-look it up. I forgot. It's so long ago now. Basically, it has been over a year, and we were kind of expecting, I think, that the DLC would be here sooner, perhaps already even. The more platforms a game or DLC is released on, the more time it's probably going to take the game or the content to be completed. This is because each port requires a little bit of tweaks, and these can be more or less tweaks depending on the engine that you're using to build the game initially with, and if that engine is better for PC or console, and if it's not good for one or the other, you know, what level of tweaks are we talking here? Big ones, small ones, what are we talking about? Releasing something on multiple platforms also usually means that one of the platforms at least is going to be a bit janky upon release. Although I feel like glitches in games bother us less now, as we've become accustomed to all games and video game content being some level of buggy upon first release, so, you know, maybe we don't have to worry too much about that, but I don't know, Security Breach was pretty janky. Gonna be real. Alright friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Gaming, if you want more FNAF content, let us know by clicking that subscribe button. When you subscribe, we get closer and closer to Rune DLC. Actually, I heard for every time you click subscribe, like you can click it, unclick it, click it again, keep doing that back and forth, a week gets knocked off the Rune DLC timeline. So it'll be here sooner. So click it. Number 6, it's free? I think this is one of the scariest things I've actually heard about this DLC, and I'm gonna tell you why. I know what you're thinking. Amanda, don't we want this DLC to be free? Isn't that nice? Then we save money, which means we have more money to undoubtedly spend on more video games, yay. And aren't we owed this in some way after Security Breach was not quite as good as we expected? First of all, no one is really ever owed almost anything. You paid for a game, you got a game, if there were parts you didn't like, that's unfortunate, but it doesn't mean anyone actually owes you a thing more than what you got. Unless it was, you know, it may be helplessly broken or unplayable in some way. Then they probably owe you something, because you bought a game, you don't really get a game because you can't really play it. Secondly, I'm worried about Runes being free because it makes me think it will be shorter than what we're hoping for. And granted, it's been in the works for what feels like forever. I mean, if it releases in December, it'll be like 2 years since the initial release of Security Breach. But what if it's not a whole other additional story? What if it's like just cosmetics somehow or something ridiculous? Or like a small like extra chapter? Like what if it's 10 minutes of game? I don't know. When things are free, it just makes me nervous that it's because the product can't actually be considered worth paying for. Because like, why are you giving this to me for free? Like, I'm just the type of person, someone's like, this is free. I'm like, what's wrong with it? I don't know. I've been burned too many times from free content and items, I guess.
I went through it at number 5, 2023. As I said earlier, the DLC is releasing this year, or at least as of last year it was supposed to be. I hope. I really hope. It might not be, but you know what? If it's not, then I have another 8 months to film DLC content and milk that thing dry before it comes out, and we can actually then like rehydrate the cow or kind of like shift the cows out and then actually have something with substance to milk. But I don't know. It would be, I don't know when it's going to come out. It's like Q1, Q2, Q3, Q5, who knows? I have no idea when it is going to come out this year. We haven't heard a word of it since the poster dropped in May or March of last year. We're almost coming up to a year mark. Come on, Steel Wool, can we get a second poster for crying out loud? Please, for the love of God, I need something. I am working off of pixels of leaked set images for the FNAF movie. I need something, please. And for eyes. And while Gregory's eyes may not be robotic, well, I mean, they might be, but there's another set on the poster that I actually want to point out. The red eyes in the top left corner of the screen. That's right. Yeah, this is very clearly Vanny, but since I've seen a few people get confused, let me explain why they're Vannies. The eyes are red, which we only see Vanny have, really, since Burntrap's eyes glow purple and the animatronic eyes don't glow. But we also know that Vanny might have been able to survive the collapse due to her being controlled by Afton, so she could have known about it beforehand, because like psychic connection, whatever, virus thing, whatever is going on. But also because she was able to get onto the roof before us when the fire starts in the rooftop ending, and we were like right at the door too. So yeah, I mean, she gets pushed off by Freddy after she's up there, but she still somehow knew to be up there before us. So yeah, I'm pretty sure she'd have found a way around a sinkhole collapsing. Plus, if she's watching the security cameras, then she's going to know that something's wrong and she'll be able to get out of there in a hurry. Plus, again, red eyes, and they're in a similar position to where Vanny was placed in the first poster appearance when she showed up as the Shadow. Getting close to the end of number 3, brightness. As always, the first thing you do whenever you get a new FNAF promo image is you brighten it and you you mess with the contrast, you mess with the levels, you don't throw it into MS Paint, you actually do it properly, and then maybe you hopefully find some secrets. And I did this, and the first thing I noticed were that there aren't any actual question marks on this poster, thank God. But there's quite a few things that did get revealed. Firstly, there are 2 windows up at the top of the poster instead of the one that shows up on the original. These windows are also kind of like angry eyes, which could indicate an overarching villain, which I guess it would be William, but also could be someone else like Baby. They also, like I said, have a very faint set of eyes in the top right corner as well, although that could be an anomaly. Since it's very faint, it is not nearly as clear as Vanny's eyes. But I also see that the girl in the middle has no color on her aside from the lights on her shoes. She's black and white. Totally. So yeah, maybe that's because he didn't want to give anything away, because, you know, clothing color at this point is the only leads we have to go off of, but who knows. Penultimately, in number 2, collapse. One of the big questions we, or the very least I, have after Security Breach is what part of the Pizzaplex collapsed after the cave-in during the true ending. And it was really up in the air as to whether it was like the entire Pizzaplex or just Roxy's Raceway, but this poster and title confirms that the Pizzaplex is in ruin. The whole place is destroyed. The giant Freddy statue from the lobby is messed up, there's rubble everywhere, and of course there are still going to be some questions. It's an illustration, but yeah, how's the rest of the Pizzaplex doing, for instance? What happened to the other animatronics? What is the main goal of this DLC? But while the latter may be answered thanks to other details, like possibly looking for Gregory, I don't think that we'll have any answers for a while yet. It's supposed to come out this year? Doubt it's gonna happen. They're probably focusing on the FNAF movie, but also it's Steel Wool, so they might be able to get it out in time, but I can't be sure. Alright, I'll believe it when I see it. And finally, in at number 1, Vanny Cam. We also see 6 monitor screens on this poster which have multiple images of security cameras and Gregory across them. I talked about the Gregory one earlier, but across these 6 monitors there are 4 different images that appear, with the bottom 2 being the odd ones out, and the 4 above it having like different images. One is of Gregory looking surprised, and another of Vanny looking at a security camera that's glitching out. Very reminiscent of the iconic Bigfoot image, kind of, that's like blurry. You know, the one where it's like, it's like that, but Vanny. And I think that it's actually one of Scott's clever tricks here, because it's like kind of how he used the sister location keypad to tell us that Crying Child was bit in 1983. I think that Scott or Steel Wool is doing the same thing with this poster. By glitching Vanny out on the screen, they're showing us that either A, Vanny was the entity that Gregory was talking to that was mentioned in the therapy tapes, if that is Gregory and not this new blonde girl, or B, that Gregory having his vision glitch out when she is nearby is due to Gregory being a robot. It could be one, or it could be the other, it could be both. We don't know at this point because it hasn't come out yet and we haven't heard anything since the poster dropped. Damn it, Steel Wool. I'm trying to make content. And it's free. The name of the DLC may be ruined, but I'm damn glad it's not going to ruin my wallet. Especially when the main game, oddly enough, still ruined me because it cost $50 and was more broken than Skyrim upon release. Yeah, and that was before I started buying cheap frozen meals to feed myself, and I was basically broke at that point, and you know what? I still am. I should probably go back to buying those meals. But anyways, I'm glad that the DLC is free, especially with the amount of mods that are probably probably going to come from the DLC. I don't know. It's maybe it's an attempted apology from Steel Wool to say, like, we know the game was busted and unfinished when it originally came out, so here you go. Here is a DLC for free. But like, the original game uncompressed was 86 gigs. Okay, that was bigger than Skyrim. For God's sakes. That was like the same file size and maybe even a little more than Grand Theft Auto 5, which is insane. Now it's around 62 gigs uncompressed, which is nice, 41 compressed, but still, like, goddamn, that's a lot for a game that didn't really have much going on when you think about it. And at 9, Help Me. Very reminiscent of the Save Them minigame from earlier FNAF games, and I'm pretty sure it's FNAF 2 and like just FNAF 2. But you can actually see Gregory's face on the bottom left monitor with the phrase "Help Me" _ written in green lettering. This to me seems to indicate that we're actually going to have to save Gregory, or the plot of this is going to be us looking for him after the collapse at the Pizzaplex, because we know that they survive. We see Gregory and Freddy sitting on a hill in the final shot after the true ending, meaning that if we do end up trying to save him, our player character might die in the process. This also means that we are not going to be playing as Gregory, but I talked about that earlier. We're probably going to be playing as the blonde girl. The underscore here could also be another indication of Gregory possibly being a robot, which is a theory about this girl as well, that she is a Elizabeth human robot, kind of like Charlie from the novels, and that so is Vanny and Vanessa, and yeah, it's a whole other confusing thing that I'm not going to get into in this. But I don't know, yeah, I have no idea if that's speculation or if that's actually like has some standing, but who knows. And at 8, Ruin. We know that the main title of the DLC is going to be Ruin, and whether that will be referencing my opinion of the series or the actual state of the Pizzaplex is unknown, but based off the poster, it's at least going to be the Pizzaplex, but it also could be both. Because like, the Pizzaplex does look absolutely destroyed, and I mean, it makes sense. There was a freaking earthquake sinkhole thing that opened up beneath it. The Freddy statue in the lobby is in pieces. There's plenty of rubble all over the ground. We can actually like see the walls next to the escalators are pretty banged up. So yeah, it's not clear if this is exactly how the lobby's gonna look. It is an illustration, not a screenshot from the game, and there are liberties that are going to be taken. Plus, this poster was released like a year ago, but again, I don't know, they could design the damage around this, or they could have like taken a screenshot and then had someone illustrate the screenshot and add some stuff in. I don't know. It's entirely possible, but given that this is supposed to be released this year, I doubt that they had stuff made properly for it last year, and honestly, they might even still be working on it at this point, because we all know that it's gonna get delayed. And also, if you are looking forward to the Ruin DLC and want to know more about it, be sure you hit subscribe. We'll be letting you know things as soon as we know. So, yeah. And at 7, Blondie. We do see a new character on this poster, one that we have seemingly never seen before, and it's the little blonde girl who's holding the flashlight that's illuminating the entire scene. She's like the only source of light, but we see nothing about her. Yeah, it's kind of weird. She's short, seemingly blonde, even though she's in black and white, and is wearing light-up Skechers because she's an absolute girl boss on her way to the mall. But also, she's presumably going to be our player character, given that she is front and center in the poster. Now, as to whether we are looking for Gregory or if Gregory is looking for us is an entirely different concept. But I had a wild idea that could have explained it. I don't know. The pigtails, reminiscent of Baby. Okay, this girl has blonde hair like Elizabeth, and while we might not be able to see her face, she could also have green eyes. Because again, we can't see her face. But also, like, anyone with blonde hair in this series makes me think of Elizabeth instantly, because, you know, she gets grabbed by Baby in '83, pigtails, blonde hair. I don't know, it seems like there's a lot that's kind of nudging us towards that conclusion. And also, given that we've made comparisons for, like, Gregory to Crying Child, it feels like this blonde girl who is seemingly looking for Gregory could be Elizabeth, you know? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, yes, they don't look alike, I get that, but also we've only seen Elizabeth Afton in 8-bit minigames, and we also have only seen a black and white back view of this girl, so we can't we only really have the hair to go off of. But also, like, look at the lights on her Skechers, alright? They're red and purple. And I'm sorry, but when have we seen purple in this series and it hasn't been an indication of an Afton being present, alright? Plus, the red is like Vanny's eyes or like Baby's everything. And at 6, Busted Chica. Like, yeah, my main girl Chica makes an appearance on the poster, but she's showing up as like the most resilient animatronic of the bunch because she's still kicking despite being crushed by a trash compactor and then having a building fall on her, and then still having the motivation to keep her smoking hot Kim K-bod. Some of it is removed and cracked. She's missing bits. Her face is seemingly melted too. She's lost the lower half of her left arm. Her left, not your left. Remember that? That's a callback. But also, she also lost her right leg warmer, which is kind of weird, but you know what? I'll warm your leg, baby. I will, alright? At least you're not Monty, who was like literally chopped in half, so. Yeah.
Number 5, a new foe, or perhaps a new ally. Some have taken to using the poster to basically decode what this game is really about, when it takes place, who's in it, who's the main character, who are all of the characters. Of course, at the end of the day, it's just a poster, so I mean, it's kind of hard to accept all of the wild theories and all of the things people seem to be coming up with to answer these questions, but one that I do feel has some merit and that we can classify as kind of a no on some level is the new enemy that people are spotting in the poster. In the top left corner of the promotional poster, if you haven't seen this yet, there are 2 glowing red eyes, or I mean what appear to be red eyes. We don't really know if they are, but they definitely look like that. Now, while Vanny also has red eyes, so did the blob we saw at the end of the game. And many are thinking that these eyes seem to kind of line up with the seemingly amalgamated blob entity we saw a little bit more than Vanny, which I also personally see. Interesting counterpoint though to this being the potential main enemy of the next game. What if this is actually our ally in the game? I mean, after all, the blob did kind of save our butts in the end in Security Breach, whether intentionally or simply because it had its own vendetta against Afton. I'd be curious to know why specifically. If it is our enemy, it like wants to be our enemy, especially if we're playing as like a nameless girl who maybe has no connection to anything. Unless maybe this girl happens to be an Afton, and then, I mean, maybe. I mean, did she do something terrible though? She's just a girl, so I don't know. More sadistic than Gregory, she is just like William Afton, murdering people left and right. Goodness. Number 4, 2023. Okay, this isn't too scary admittedly. I mean, this does mean we can probably expect the game later this year, at some point, right? Well, what if that isn't true? After all, dates get pushed back all the time, especially when you only have a month and a year expected release date for video game projects. And this is a project that we don't even have both of those things for as of yet. All we know is the year, 2023. I also just feel like not having even a month guideline means that it's likely we're not going to see this game for a while, or this DLC for a while. Even if it's not pushed to next year, we could have to wait until maybe the end of 2023 in December to see the game. I mean, if we only know it's being released this year, it could be released, keep in mind, as late as December 31st, 2023, because that would still be 2023. And that honestly feels right now, that feels really far away. Like it was just December a minute ago, so we got a ways to go. Maybe not scary, but definitely a little bit depressing to think about when it comes to just how little we know in terms of this DLC's release date, or you know, lack thereof, I guess I should say. Number 3, not just a concept. Here is something that is less scary to ease the revelation of where Steel Wool was reported to be at in November with this DLC, and how they basically were just past, you know, that concept stage. They went on to say in their announcement, the vertical slice build was the very first one in my career that was a complete actual VC with functional versions of all the gameplay elements and systems we'd intended to build. Our team is absolutely crushing it, and we couldn't be prouder of them. We're fired up and can't wait to share more with you all. This is more promising because it kind of seems like their VC is a more of a realized concept anyways. However, once again, I would take even this moment of brief celebration from Steel Wool's executive producer Ray McCaffrey with a grain of salt, because the fact that a vertical slice exists could also be a sign of danger ahead when it comes to what's going on with the Rune DLC and honestly the game studio, Steel Wool Studios itself. Number 2, disillusionment. A vertical slice isn't just a tool to be used for developers as a guide when they're building the world and creating the game or the DLC. A vertical slice can also be something that's actually requested by investors. In fact, this can happen when investors actually have no real knowledge of the video game industry and what goes, into building a video game more specifically, or when the investors simply don't have a lot of confidence in the project based on the knowledge they do have of the studio and their body of work, or the project in question itself. There's just something about it they don't get. Basically they're like, we'd like to see more information, like we need a pitch. If this is the case with Rune, and of course it very well might not be. The VC could, just be for in-house development, or it could be a routine part of their process in relation to their investors. This could be an indicator that either investors are attached to this project who have no clue what is getting made here, or worse, they don't have a lot of confidence in what's being made. So, it's possible. Number 1, silver lining. Despite this being a scary list, I feel like I need to end this on a high note, because at the end of the day, as FNAF fans, we're all hopeful for the continuation of the video game franchise, and we want to see it succeed. Successful adaptations, games, DLC, all of this only means that we have a better chance of getting more and more quality content for years to come. Fingers crossed. So, what I want to add is that although the vertical slice could be something for us to be worried about, generally speaking, it seems for Steel Wool to be something they actively wanted to improve on, because in that same announcement from November 2022 where they updated us a bit, they discussed changes they made as well as things they wanted to personally improve on. One of those things, a major point in fact, seemed to be for them that they wanted to focus on their pre-production process. Now, why is this important to note? Why does that even matter? Interesting story of the security breach game, its plot and the execution of said plot. It's easy to see how this could actually kind of be the result of poor planning actually. Like some of the issues in this game could be because their planning phase wasn't as great as it could have been. Same with some gameplay features such as the vastness of the map, which wasn't really utilized as much as I think we'd all hoped it would be, with whole areas designed and built into the massive mega pizzaplex, but seemingly existing without really having any purpose to serve in the game. Which, you could go there and explore it, but you don't really do stuff there. So hopefully they're figuring out those kinks.
In a 10, save him. Now, there is a very clear connection between the Ruin poster and the Save Them minigame from FNAF 2. The text on the screen, at least to me, indicates that what we will have to do is save Gregory from whatever situation that he's in, with Freddy. Since we know that eventually he does make it to that hill that he sits on in the true ending, in the Princess Quest ending. However, it could be possible that that scene, in this case, is just a dream, since it's more realistic than the other endings. That could also just be because it's the true ending and it's canon, but it's currently unclear. Obviously, if it's real, we will end up being successful, but it's possible that our character, whoever she is, will die in the process. I could also be drawing weird connections between things that aren't really linked, but that's always possible when theory crafting, at literally any point, so. And at 9, Robot Gregory. This poster, in my eyes, also helps prove further that Gregory is in fact a robot, since after all we get confirmation that Vanny messes up the cameras, as you can see from the 2 screens that have Vanny on them. They're both glitching out. This is further supported by our last point, because how would Gregory be able to add a help me sign to a screen without being able to access the cameras? Nowhere on our fast watch does it say that we can add text, and Freddy clearly doesn't have the ability, since he would have used it during the section where we have to open the doors for him so that we can then be a sussy baka and vent, instead of just, standing there and waving. He could have had text flashing up on screen so that we can see him easily. Multiple people I watched play this had difficulty with this section, okay? Freddy just flashing some text on screen saying I'm here, especially when the player takes a while, would have established that he had this power, but they didn't. So unless they want to somehow retcon that in, it has to be that Gregory's controlling it. Most likely because he's a robot and he can just, tap into the cameras. And at 8, no more Freddy. There is also a possibility that Freddy is destroyed, or that he won't be in this DLC at all thanks to the statue we see on the poster. This poster could be an indication of what happened to Freddy after the Pizzaplex's collapse. I mean, after all, the collapse did destroy Chica, right? So why couldn't it have destroyed Freddy too? Yes, he ends up on the hill with Gregory, but like I said, that could be a dream or a heaven of sorts, or it could be years after the actual ending of the game. We can't really be certain. Or at the very least, the game could be omitting Freddy day, and he won't make an appearance for whatever reason, hence why the statue is destroyed. I mean, like, look at it. This thing is in pieces, but why? There isn't much rubble around it, and the escalator walls are way less damaged than this, so why would the statue have been so heavily damaged if there was nothing that actually hit it? Seems a bit sus if you ask me. And it's 1 year later. With the DLC not releasing until 2023, the question remains of when in the timeline it will take place. Yes, it will take place after the true ending for Security Breach, but how long after the true ending is the question. See, with the state of the animatronics, it seems that it could be later on, and the release date being 2 years after the release of the original game means that it could be linear in the timeline sense, so it could also take place 2 years after the ending. But that would then bring on the question of why is Gregory back there if it's a year or two later? But then we also have to ask who is this girl and where they came from if we're really going to know this answer. So while there are theories, this one specifically coming from Amanda because of the release date, we still don't know for sure until we have some more information. Time to wait another 6 months before another teaser. And it's 6, Chica Graffiti. While zooming in on Chica like I always do, I did notice that her torso seems to have traces of red on it. Now what this is in reality is definitely unclear, but it could be graffiti, indicating that this could be later on in the timeline. She could have been decommissioned for a while after being revived for whatever purpose, and maybe some kids got to her and decided to spray paint her. Or, more likely, it's actually pizza sauce. See, brightening the image while basic FNAF at this point is also still helpful, and I used it in the last Ruins video. However, while the red is evident on the normal poster, by brightening you can actually see that there is yellow dripping from Chica's face. And unless Chica started listening to Bear Grylls in order to survive the collapse of the Pizzaplex, I'm pretty sure that it's melted cheese dripping from her mouth, which would also explain the red in tandem. I mean, it could be her beak, but like, we were trying to explain the red, so cheese makes sense. Like I said, it would mean that the red stuff would then be pizza sauce and potentially pepperoni or some other form of meat that the Pizzaplex kitchen would add on pizza. But it could also be blood. Not sure from who, but maybe Chica saved Vanny's life or something. Also, I was at Niagara Comic-Con 2 days ago, and there was a girl dressed as Chica. Didn't know who I was. It was kind of offensive. It was really humbling. Halfway through, into number 5, the FNAF ARG. This was brought up in a recent MatPat FNAF theory, and people are starting to suggest that it's going to be involved in this DLC. The basic idea that the FNAF Fazbear Fright Spokes were originally going to have an ARG that Scott ended up cutting out for whatever reason, and then released part of it in the Felix the Shark Book 12. However, I'm here to tell you guys that it's not real, okay? Scott has said on multiple occasions that he doesn't want to cross the line between fact and fiction, and that he wants to keep the two worlds separate, probably because FNAF relates so closely to Chuck E. Cheese. And that's also why he wouldn't really make a real FNAF location, okay? He stuck to this so hard that he didn't even make a website for the indie game dev introduced in FNAF VR like he wanted to, because he thought that it would be too fuzzy for the line, okay? So, look. There is no FNAF ARG, okay? If a website is too much, there is no bigger quest here. Last time we thought this, there was a restaurant that got harassed, and a pizzeria owner who just so happened to be named Mike also got harassed. So please, don't go out searching. If there was an ARG, I'm sure Scott would have said something about it, okay? So don't harass anyone, just stick to the games and the game files. Crack open FNAF 3's mobile game if you want to see if there's the image there. Just leave the real world locations and people alone. And at 4, simulation. It's also worth mentioning that there are multiple instances on the poster that feel unfinished. Now, I don't know if this was because the poster was rushed, which has seemingly been a trend with FNAF recently, or because they're simply mistakes, but I wanted to point out in case it has bigger implications. Like when I mentioned the last time we talked about this, the floor at the bottom actually cuts off, but the rocks on top of the floor don't. Mostly because at this point the ground without brightening had mostly faded into black, but the rock was still kind of visible. However, even unbrightened, you can see the clear divide between the tile and just pure black. You can also see that on the left, the floor does the same. And this is very clear in the original poster, okay? I mean, like, there's even a glowing rock sitting at the border. Oh, it's like glowing because it has reflecting light on it, but it also kind of reminds me of when an item is important, so it's highlighted in the game even if it makes it unrealistic. But the most interesting part in my eyes is the tree on the far right. The one in the back next to the escalator. The bottom 2 sections of it are blank. Like, they're just filled in with a black outline and then solid brown color. Like the artist had finished the color blocking and then forgot to finish the tree despite doing the rest of that tree. I don't know if this is intentional or not, but if it is, then could this be pointing to the entire thing being a simulation? Which would then bring up the question of how and who. Like, maybe this is what Vanny is seeing in her head while Glitchtrap was taken over, so that she's still like the good guy in her head, so she's not fighting back against Glitchtrap's control. Or maybe it's Gregory still caught in his dream that started in 1983. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Prisoner. Now time to get to some theories about our blondie in the middle. Who is she? I made it a point last time to mention that she looked an awful lot like the middle silhouette of the 9 children who ended up going missing due to Vanny, and I still stand by that point. So the most realistic answer I have is that the missing children weren't actually dead, but they were rather trapped inside the building somewhere. Much like how Vanny in the very first trailer for the game said, "Gregory, your friends are here with me."
Gregory, your friends are worried about you. They're here with me. Please come out.
So clearly, Gregory must have known these children, right? Which explains why he came to the Pizzaplex in the first place, but it doesn't explain how he never mentions them. Either way, this is a very real possibility that this blonde girl is just a missing child who, thanks to the collapse of the Pizzaplex, managed to escape containment. But ultimately, in at number 2, Elizabeth Afton. Okay, this one is a bit wild, but hear me out. I also mentioned last time how both of these kids look like Aftons. Gregory is very clearly meant to at least be an allegory for crying child, okay? The stripes on the shirt, the age, the relationship with Freddy, it was right there in our faces. Whether you believe he is a robot or not, he is at least meant to represent crying child. And now, look at this girl. While she may be in black and white, she is still very clearly blonde. She has pigtails like Baby does, and we all know who Elizabeth ends up possessing. She's wearing a skirt exactly like Elizabeth was wearing in the one time we see her in Sister Location. I mean, if crying child's 2 stripes are enough for a comparison, I think this is more than enough. And then look at her shoes. The lights are the only thing that has color on them, which is very clearly meant to have our attention. And then those lights are purple and red. Purple very clearly representing William Afton, and while last time I said that the red could be Vanny, Baby is absolutely covered in red. From the clothes to her hair. Red is all over that animatronic. Or it could be that this girl is evil, just like how Elizabeth always wants to impress her father. Just saying. It's not the craziest thing this series would have done. Okay, it would have been, okay, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Or again, they could have just been taken because they look like the kids. And finally, in at number 1, time travel. This one is crazy, I will admit, and it's most definitely not the case, but FNAF has already established time travel as possible in the very first Fazbear Frights book called Into the Pit. Remember that one? Where Oswald ends up jumping into a ball pit and somehow leaving 2011 and appearing in 1985 to witness the missing children's incident? Yeah, that story wasn't written for no reason. And where do we see the first ball pit that wasn't in a pizzeria that was simply meant to lure animatronics around? Oh, would you look at that? The Mega Pizzaplex. I'm just saying that time travel has already been established, and considering how sketchy Gregory is, I wouldn't put it past him from being from the future or something. There are actually 2 key indicators that point in this direction, at least in my mind. The therapy disc where the therapist calls client 46 out on the lies about their home life, and the fact that when he leaves the Pizzaplex in the worst ending, he sleeps in a cardboard box. The therapist in the tape says that 46, which I'm still certain is Gregory, has a great home life, but what they told their previous therapist was a lie. But if that is the case and his home life is great, despite saying his parents and him suffered some form of tragedy, how is it that he sleeps in a cardboard box? Like, his home life is great, but he sleeps in a box. Because it hasn't happened yet. The tragedy where he most likely loses his parents hasn't happened as of when the game takes place, which would mean that this girl could be Gregory's sister who came back to save him when he didn't return. Or he could be lying and instead using the name of someone he knows is a missing child in the future, which is why he can't go home. Or why the therapist describes him as writing down his past as if it was a story. Because it is a story, just not his. In the 10, Into the Pit. This is crazy, okay? I will admit, and it is 100% not what's going to happen, but FNAF has already established time travel as possible in the very first Fazbear Frights book, Into the Pit. Remember where Oswald jumps into a ball pit and somehow leaves his year, which I predicted was 2011 in a previous video, and then appears in 1985 to witness 5 children getting killed? Yeah, that story wasn't written for no reason, I think. And where do we see the first ball pit that isn't in a simulated pizzeria meant to just attract animatronics and not really kids? The Mega Pizzaplex. I'm just saying, alright, the time travel is already established and technically canon in the FNAF multiverse. And considering how sketchy Gregory is, I wouldn't put it past him from being from the future. There are 2 moments that in my head really solidify this as a possibility, albeit a wild possibility, but a possibility nonetheless. I mean, like the therapist disc where the therapist calls client 46 out about the lies about their home life, and then the fact that when Gregory leaves the Pizzaplex in the worst ending, he sleeps in a cardboard box. Okay, the therapist in one of the tapes says that 46, which I'm still at this point at least kind of thinking is Gregory, had a great home life, but they told their previous therapist that they had a horrible one. But if that is the case and they have a great home life, how is that the case if he's sleeping in a cardboard box? Maybe because it hasn't happened yet. The tragedy where he most likely loses his parents hasn't happened when the game takes place. It happens in the future, which could mean that this girl that we play as could be Gregory's sister who came to save him when he didn't actually come back to their time. It's nuts, but it's possible. Anything is possible with FNAF at this point. In at 9 friends. Now a theory about our little blonde girl in the middle of the poster, alright? Who is she? I made it a point last time to mention how she looked an awful lot like the silhouette of the 9 children who have gone missing due to Vanny, and I still stand by that. So, in my mind, the most realistic answer is that the missing children aren't actually dead. Or at least this time they aren't. That they were instead trapped inside the building somewhere, much like how Vanny in the first trailer says that Gregory, your friends are here with me, or something like that.
Gregory, your friends are worried about you. They're here with me. Please come out.
So clearly, Gregory, at least originally, knew these missing children, which explains why he came to the Pizzaplex in the first place, but it doesn't explain how he never mentions them. Either way, it's a very real possibility that this blonde girl is just a missing child who is also one of Gregory's friends. That, thanks to the collapse, managed to escape whatever prison she was stuck in. And it ain't save him. Now, there is a very clear connection between the Ruins poster and the Save Them minigame from FNAF 2. The text on that one screen, at least to me, indicates that we might have to save Gregory from whatever situation he's in with Freddy. Since we know that eventually he does make his way onto the hill that he sits in after the true ending and the Princess Quest ending. However, it could be possible that that scene we see just happens before and then he comes back, although I wouldn't see why he would come back. It's also possible that that's just a dream, since it's more realistic than the other endings. But, I mean, it could just be because the true ending is canon and that's why it's realistic, but you know what? Nothing is clear with FNAF. Obviously, if it's real, we will end up being successful for saving Gregory, but it is possible that we will die in the process. And you know what? Here's hoping. I don't want more children to keep track of. And at 7, save us. What if we're the ones who need help this time around? I mean, we have no idea who this person is and what they're doing, but maybe they're not one of the missing kids and they just also got trapped somehow as well. I mean, it's a question of how they would have gotten in, of course, and like, why are they exploring this place if it's destroyed and they're the size of a 4-year-old as well? But like, still, no idea why she could be in the Pizzaplex, but my job isn't to theorize about why, but about what. This plot may end up being that we have to help Gregory save us so that he can show us the way out. Or the game is just going to be replayed as a new character with Gregory as our guardian telling us how to get around and get out of the Pizzaplex, which might satisfy those of you who wanted the Choose Your Guardian DLC. I said it wasn't going to happen. It just didn't make sense to do, since like it would just be the same game again, but slightly different. And I was right. And at 6, Bonnie's released. And while we may not be choosing our guardian, it's definitely possible that in this whole mess, Bonnie was released from whatever prison he was being held in. Or at least something like that could be possible. I mean, there are plenty of doors that we can only get behind if we had level 10 security clearance, which is impossible within the game. So those doors could have been opened or have just been destroyed in the collapse, which could explain how we get into these sections now that we probably aren't going around trying to collect security badges, if there are any even left remaining. But a security door level 10 would make much more sense since we have no idea what could be behind any of those doors. Maybe they kept Bonnie in some stasis chamber since he's a sentient AI that couldn't really be moved or something. I don't know, okay, it's FNAF. They'll come up with a scenario and a reason and we won't really be able to fight it. That's just how it goes. Halfway through into number 5, antagonist. We've played as the antagonist before, however the player we were was only an antagonist in the next game, not in the game that we were playing, meaning that this time we could be playing as an actual antagonist. I mean, Chica being in the poster either means that there is a connection or we're just being messed with, and recently I think we're always being messed with, so I'm gonna go with that, meaning that this little girl could possibly be Vanny. I mean, we know that Vanny does have a spirit within the building as we see in the rooftop ending, but could we actually be playing as her child spirit? I mean, it's possible. It wouldn't be the wildest thing that FNAF has ever done. Additionally, I mean, we could be the spirit found in Princess Quest because, like, come on, would that really be out of the question? At this point, I'm pretty sure Princess Quest is destroyed, so maybe it released something. It's not out of the question. It's unlikely, but it's not impossible. Okay, there's a difference there. It would explain why she's in black and white unless there's, like, light on her. So, in at 4, Chica's Revenge. Chica being on the poster though is not necessarily just for a distraction. It could be that it is meant to indicate that Chica is the reason all of this is happening. And honestly, after Niagara Falls Comic Con, I wouldn't put it past Chica. That's right, I'm still mad about it. I mean, after all this, it could be some form of twisted revenge for Gregory dismantling her in an attempt to escape originally. So could this girl be a manifestation of Susie, as an attempt to gain our trust and inevitably kill us? Or at least try to, at the very least, because, like, I mean, to be fair, if we think about it, we aren't going to kill Gregory or get Gregory killed, since after all he does still need to make it up to the hill at the end of the Afton ending. So unless that happens and then he comes back, which seems unlikely given the help me text on the monitor and the fact that he just swore he would never do that, I feel like this is kind of possible. So could this all just be a manifestation trying to gain our trust? Probably not, but the more Chica, the happier I am. Usually. Getting close to the end of number 3, Client 46. Could this new blonde girl actually be Client 46? The mysterious therapy client who never speaks, but we all thought was Gregory, or at least some of us, most of us thought was Gregory. I mean, honestly, it could make a lot of sense. It would explain why 46 would be talking to Vanny despite Gregory being afraid of Vanessa. It would explain how they could hack the animatronics but not be able to stop them by hacking them again like Gregory could have. It would explain how their home life was great despite their accounts of the past, since after all, Gregory does end up sleeping in a cardboard box. And it makes a lot more sense than he's a time traveler and the tragedy just hasn't happened yet. It would also explain why we never hear 46 talk, because it's a girl, and it would just make us think that it's Vanny or Vanessa instead of it being someone we hadn't seen before. Client 46 was a kid, as evidenced by multiple recordings, and they would be immune to the deaths of her therapist if she was talking to Vanny, but who could this mysterious girl be? But ultimately, in at number 2, Ghost. While yes, this girl could be 46, it's also possible that she is Elizabeth Afton, either as a ghost, which if she is 46 wouldn't really make sense, or she could be possessed by Elizabeth Afton's spirit. If we take a look at the blob, which does include Circus Baby, her eyes aren't lit anymore, meaning that the spirit is no longer in there. And considering how Afton's body still somehow survived, and we think that Michael managed to make his way into Glamrock Freddy, it would make sense that Elizabeth's spirit would survive as well, especially if she wanted to stick around to keep trying to impress dear old dad. Since in a previous video we came to the conclusion that Remnant can only be burned away if the spirit wants to be set free, or rather the burning doesn't really do anything and they're only released if they get their unfinished business completed, like the original Missing Children in the Happiest Day minigame, getting that party. Elizabeth could be sent to gain Gregory's trust and then defeat him like she did in Sister Location, or maybe she's there to find her brother. And finally, in at number 1, Great Escape. The final potential plot would be a great escape story, where this blonde girl has come to the rescue of Gregory or has been released because she was trapped, and now she has to make a break for it while the building collapses around her. Will she save Gregory or will she only save herself? Multiple endings are not out of the question and kind of expected at this point, with one of them, the most difficult, seemingly being the true ending. But who knows? Maybe none of these are right and we're all reading into this idea way too much. And our expectations are just going to ruin this DLC for us. That's right, I made the joke. You thought I was done making cringy jokes and puns. Hell to the no. I will always try and make terrible messages and jokes because that's just what I do. No matter where I am, terrible, unrelated, possibly offensive jokes are always being made. Firstly, based off of what we're expressly told in-game, it could actually be possible. All we really know is that Bonnie ended up going into Monty Golf around 4 AM and then that was the last place he was seen. Quote from the duffel bag, security report, 12:24 AM. Bonnie is seen leaving his green room in Rockstar Row heading east towards the atrium. 2:40 AM, Bonnie enters the East Arcade. 4:12 AM, Bonnie enters Monty Golf. That's the last of a repaired Bonnie that we ended up seeing, since in another bag we learned, quote, with Bonnie out of commission, we are making Monty the new bass player. Parts and service has already done the proper adjustments. This could be a good thing. Monty could be even more popular than Bonnie. Which, in combination to the fact that Bonnie was last seen in Monty Golf, suggests that Monty is the culprit behind Bonnie's destruction. Which is odd, in my opinion, because like we know Monty loves smashing things, so like that's not the weird part about this. My thought is, where was Monty chilling before he moved into Rockstar Row? Like, we don't see any real living quarters in Monty Golf, and the only other animatronics that we see outside of the core 4 is the daycare attendant who has his own room above the ball pit. So, where could Monty have been staying if not in Rockstar Row? Anyway, if Monty is to blame for the destruction of Bonnie, we could see Bonnie come back in the DLC. But unfortunately, it wouldn't be really to get revenge on Monty, since we see that Monty does indeed face justice. At least, justice if he was guilty for the crimes. And if not, then it was just destruction. There is another theory, however, that could counter this point if it's true. The idea that Glamrock Bonnie's endo was used to create the new body that Afton inhabits in the true ending, Burn Trap. Now, we've covered this in another video, link to that is in the iCard, but in that video we came to the conclusion that the entire endo wasn't used, since the shoulders on Burn Trap aren't wide enough compared to the male Glamrock endos. And the fact that Afton's muscle fibers, or nerves, again, still not quite sure what they are still connected, would prove that it's the old suit. But there are sections where the fibers are blocked, like on the left foot and left arm. Both things that he was missing, or were more damaged at the time, while in his scrap trap form. Seemingly suggesting that perhaps these specific parts came from Glamrock Bonnie instead of the whole endoskeleton. Maybe they were the only parts that they could use after Monty had his fun. Maybe they cut Monty off from destroying the rest of him, hence why he starts smashing his green room. We're not sure, and frankly the latter is just speculation, but it's still interesting. Originally, I was against the whole Glamrock Bonnie endoskeleton thing because, well, frankly, the body in the suit kind of disproved it for me. But I think I might have found a way to make it work. Like I said, looking at the model, I'm still not 100% sure. But if this was the Glamrock Bonnie endo, again, it would need to have broader shoulders, and actually it would need to be shorter. Unless they're like using the female endo for Bonnie, which wouldn't really make sense, so I don't think that they would, especially if they're gonna give Bonnie shoulder pads. But I mean, like, even if we scale them so they're the same height, the endos, when posed the same way, and I'm comparing to like an actual endo, not the Glamrock Bonnie fan art, they still don't line up. And I mean, there are similarities between the two, of course, but there aren't enough where I can even call this above 50%. There are also issues of, again, the muscles being woven throughout the body. If it was just the head, I would understand, since they could have just put the old head on a new endo body, but with the muscles throughout the rest of the endo, that's too intricate to have been placed there. Even if they were, they would be dangling. They would just be hanging out, unless they had been stuck there, like, with super glue. Because, like, they were deep in there, because, you know, he was shoved full of machine parts, so... Yeah, if Afton was going to transfer his head to a new endo, it wouldn't come with the rest of the body bits. So, yeah, I'm gonna go with they added the arm and the leg on after the fact. But what would that mean for Glamrock Bonnie? Well, it would mean that if decommissioning Bonnie was a part of Vanny's plan to resurrect Afton, there would really be no Bonnie available that you could bring back, since he would really just be decommissioned. And while the other animatronics do come back, losing a leg and an arm is worse than your legs, your eyes, or just being smashed, since he wouldn't really be able to hop around on one leg despite being a bunny, and since he only had one arm, he wouldn't really be able to crawl like Monty does. So, I mean, I suppose the DLC could instead just be replacing Monty with Glamrock Bonnie, but that's achievable with mods, so there isn't really a point to making that a paid DLC, since we would all just opt into modding the game for that experience. Plus, certainly the model they use for Bonnie would end up being the one added to the mod instead of the current one, so at this point we'd need a solid DLC to actually make it worth it. With that being said, however, Bonnie being decommissioned might actually impact his presence in the game, but not to the story, since the DLC could be, like I've suggested before in other videos, a series of missions that involve us investigating his disappearance, possibly as a favor to Freddy, since he really seemed to miss Bonnie. Like, he was pretty sad when he was saying that there's no bunny in this Pizzaplex, not anymore. That was my Freddy impression. Maybe it would even be because Freddy was already investigating it or something like that, saying that he knows Monty's been giving him side-eye and wanted to know if that Monty would be coming after Freddy next, since after all, Monty is stronger than Freddy, at least until we break Monty's brains in with a giant bucket filled with balls, which is a total hazard, by the way. I mean, like, come on. The giant bucket that we used to crush Monty is such a issue for health and safety for both employees and for customers, because, like, if a 6-year-old kid with a 4-year-old's body can use it to destroy an animatronic, how safe is it going to be for literally anyone else? Like, what's the point of the bucket anyway? Like, is it supposed to contain water? Because, like, when it falls on Monty, it breaks the catwalk that we're on. And honestly, water, especially in that quantity, is going to be a lot heavier than some ball pit balls filled with air. Seriously, who the living hell thought that this was going to be a good idea? Or like, how have they not gotten fined for it yet? Or like, how have they not fixed it if they have gotten fined? Yeah, there are guardrails on the catwalk, but that doesn't matter if there's a giant bucket that can destroy the catwalk that you're standing on and then cause you to fall to your death. Especially when falling that distance just like severed Monty's legs from his torso. Anyway, sorry, rant aside, maybe once Freddy has Monty's hands, we're able to investigate the rest of what happened to Bonnie. Maybe we get into Monty's green room and then kind of like suss out what went wrong. And no, that was not an Among Us joke, despite me constantly making Among Us jokes about this game because Gregory is sus, he vented. But like, maybe in the end, we would find Bonnie's casing with a missing arm and a missing leg, and then we would know for certain that I'm right. Now, do I think that this is going to happen? Really? I'm not sure. Like, a lot of people seemingly want to see Bonnie in this game, so much so that they are replacing Monty using mods, but also the idea for the Choose Your Guardian DLC is also very popular, and perhaps even more popular than the others. However, since we know DLCs to be canon add-ons, I'm guessing that a Bonnie investigation would be more likely than switching up the robot who protects us, since honestly, the whole Bonnie thing has less lore implications in the long run. Having someone other than Freddy protect us just seems like it would be too messy, especially with the fact that we would have to steal the other bits from the animatronics, and if we pick Roxy, then we have her eyes the entire game, which is kind of cheating. Well, like, you know, you get it? You do understand what I mean here? Like, I like the idea, but it's probably just gonna have to be a mod instead of actual canon DLC, okay? I hate to say it, even though I say it every time I talk about this mod.